impressive academic background in museum studies from the University of Arizona and Sydney Uni. Shannon is also the project manager for Dimensions in Testimony, a truly unique way of preserving the voice and message of the survivors for future generations. I've been present at the museum many times when school groups or adult visitors were first introduced to this technology and watched as they forgot the technology and engaged with the survivor. We are fortunate indeed to have Shannon with us today presenting Dimensions in Testimony for the first time outside the walls of the museum. So please help me welcome Shannon.
Hello? Sorry. I do want to say something, and Simon is just incredible, and I think that it's a big loss that I feel all the time at the museum, not having him with us, and this really leads on well to what he was talking about with the future. But I can't resist saying one thing, because at the end there was a bit of a discussion about the future of Holocaust education, and the topic of the world that was brought up. And the world that was is actually one of these really difficult areas in the museum. When we refurbished our Holocaust exhibition, it was absolutely integral to our Holocaust survivors that we include that section. But how you do it, you know, to engage with students in communities that are so far away and so foreign is actually really difficult. The museum's actually turning 30 this year, and as part of our master plan, we think a lot about this because we get probably about 80 to 90% of students in New South Wales come to the museum. It's absolutely incredible. And we're very cognizant that we don't want the first impression that all of these students, mostly who are not Jewish, to have of Jews is the murder of so many in the Holocaust. And so when we're actually embarking on a master planning, which has just been unveiled a week ago, to build a new museum that focuses on Jewish life. And it is our kind of ambition that everybody's first interaction with the community is through Jewish culture and religion, and that hopefully we can bring in families, and this is the first point of call. So then when they come back in their high school years and learn about the Holocaust, it is just so much more meaningful for them, and that we don't have to, you know, go back and, you know, clarify that Jews are people too, because that's ridiculous. One of the things, so for those, has everyone been to the Sydney Jewish Museum? Okay, great. Oh, so you should come and visit while you're here. You should come. So our museum was founded by Holocaust survivors 30 years ago. And since I've been there, when I first started about 17 years ago, every visitor who came to our museum met a Holocaust survivor. They would be stationed around the museum, they would talk to visitors, they would talk to students, and but far and above, our feedback has always been that it is the most poignant and moving experience that anyone has. And I think even compared to some museums like the big one, Washington, the communal feel that our survivors give is a really important one. And so we have thought a lot, especially over the last 10 years, what are we going to do when they are just unfortunately no longer with us? And so over the years, we have embarked on a lot of filming projects. We've started moving towards more of a full body kind of shoot, because this way you also capture a lot of the person's gestures. It's really interesting. I've interviewed some child survivors, and when they're sitting in their chair, you see their legs swing like a little child. Like, you really get a sense of the person in this new type of filming. And we've been very interested in technologies, because it's not only what you capture, but it's how you capture it, and making sure that it's available for whatever technologies are in the future. And so that's what led us to volumetric capture. So volumetric capture is a way where you can station the cameras around in stereoscopic pairs. So a traditional stereoscopic display is a left and right eye, so you trick the eyes to make dimensionality. And in stereoscopic pairs as well, one is kind of taking a dimension and one is capturing the image. So you can figure out these sort of display techniques. And so we were very fortunate. We've partnered with the USC Shoah Foundation, who is leaders in this, and we came to them through this idea of volumetric capture to bring out their rig to Australia. And so this rig that came, it has 23 cameras arranged in stereoscopic pairs, and so we've done every interview 360 degrees. So hopefully one day when the technology is available, we will actually be able to create a dimensional image. Now, for those of you who are interested in data, each interview is about 128 terabytes worth of data. So it is a lot of information that we are capturing. But we started on this project, Dimensions in Testimony, because we were very interested in the technology and making sure that our interviews are going to be available for whatever comes in the future. But I have to say, the interviews are the most amazing that we have ever done at the museum. They are really moving. So each survivor was filmed over the course of 1 week. Now, very interesting, you see Eddie, this is his resting pose. So every time Eddie tells you anything, he has to come back and he has to be in this pose. He also has to wear the same clothes every day. So he had multiples of these just in case he spilled on. So you don't actually know in the interview, was he interviewed on day 1? Was he interviewed on day 4? And what we did is we asked him about 1,000 questions. And the luxury of interviewing someone over the time of a week, you really got to explore every sort of facet of their story, of who they were. Because usually when Eddie would come and speak to students, he'd have 40 minutes. There were large chunks of things he never talked about, that he never really shared, that, it was kind of down to this fine-tuned script. But in these interviews, we could really unturn every little facet of his story. It took us about 3 months to research each one to come up with all the interview questions. And it involved us looking at anything that the person ever recorded, said. If they wrote a book, we read it. If they did a YouTube talk, we watched it. We went through everything just in case someone would come and ask a question about it. And then there was a whole team of us. And as he was speaking, we'd be writing notes and coming up with the follow-up questions. Because for those of you who interview, it can be very difficult. Things get left behind in the interview. And so on the very last day or the next day, we would go back and we would ask those questions. So how does this work? So there's 2 points. There's the technology, how it was captured, and then, which is the volumetric capture, and then there's the AI. And so what this does, it works a little bit like Siri or Alexa. So when you ask the system a question, it translates it into a text. That text then does a search for an appropriate clip by word. So we either train it, so we go in the back and we tell this question, you pull this clip. I'll give you an example. And when I say AI, it's very important. We are not creating clips. We're not, everything that he said, he actually said. We've just cut it into little clips. We don't put them together. We don't create new ones. We don't edit all of the words. This is it. But maybe Eddie had said something like, we'd asked him, when were you born? You might ask him, what's his birth date? It's the same answer. And so we're just trying to get to the bottom of all of these in this AI. And it makes for a really incredible experience. It takes us about 6 months to train each one of these. So it's been a long road. We started this in 2020. So it's been about 2 years since we recorded our first survivor. We've recorded 6 in total. 6 survivors in total. And as Susan said, we're opening an exhibition where there'll be 3 of them that we've finished, including Eddie, will be on display. I will also tell you, we're trying something new. I hope it works. There's something called an array mic. And so this microphone, it has an audio fence. So when you step into the audio fence and you ask a question, it triggers the software. And it will respond. And so it really gives this seamless, lifelike reaction. And it's amazing watching people interact. We run at the museum 2 beta test sessions a day. And you can watch people, they say, oh, thank you, Eddie, and that's great. The technology really does fall away. I think at the museum, we were very hesitant to do this. We're not very gimmicky. We're kind of old-fashioned as an organization. And so we were unsure. But I have to say, the more that we've used it, the more that we see how people can connect. Because it really lets you experience testimony in an all-new way. You can ask Eddie whatever you're interested in. Is it if it's food, or if it's the pre-war life, or if it's coming to Australia, what it was like in the camps. You can explore those areas of testimony, and it really lets you pique your interest. It's been absolutely incredible. I do want to say one non-dimensions and testimony related thing, because I think what Simon was talking about with the future of testimony, and in this reverberations exhibition that I'm doing, dimensions and testimony will be on display, but we've actually got a bunch of curated testimony that we're also including. And so these are clips that we have all put together. And what's kind of been one of the top priorities for this exhibition is, how do you humanize technology? How do you make it feel personal? How do you give this human sense to these stories, to this video? Because it's not a person. And so what we are really exploring in Reverberations is to talk less about the actual history and more about the meaning of it later in life. To talk about topics like forgiveness and justice and revenge, and how the trauma continues. And I'm going to be very interested to see how people react to that. And I think it's also going to be really wonderful for us to be able to open up dialogues with other communities about what does justice mean to them, and what does justice mean in this community. What is the concept of justice in Judaism at all? And I would love to bring in rabbis to talk about forgiveness in the Jewish tradition, because it's not how it is in the Christian tradition at all, or how it actually lives out in society. So anyways, that's just a side thought on this. I'll tell you one other great thing about it is, so I said that basically this technology, what it does is it translates whatever you say into text. We can actually look at the questions that people are asking. And it's incredible. And what's really, I think, eye-opening, so they've had this in the US for about 10 years now. And they've looked at how people interact with this technology and the type of questions, and they had their top 100. So we had to ask these questions no matter what. They didn't have to answer. I don't want to talk about that. It was a very valid response, but we had to pose the question because that was something that people were likely going to ask. And it's very interesting. I think that when especially younger ones, when it's not really a person, you might ask something a little bit more intimate that you wouldn't feel comfortable necessarily ask someone. Like to ask someone like, were you ever beaten? Like, you don't want to ask those questions, or what was it like losing your mother? Like, just to invoke that trauma, but we do find that people are asking those sorts of questions, which made us ask those questions that, maybe we wouldn't really feel comfortable asking them at all. The other really interesting, out of the top 100, I would say 50% of the questions that people ask have to do with reflective questions. Can you forgive? Do you hate? Do you think there was justice? Like, this is something that I think people are very interested in. And typically, testimony at our museum has always revolved around, what was your experience in the camps, and using it to teach history. But what I've been learning about this project in Dimensions in Testimony is really important in humanizing the Holocaust. And bringing these stories forward, I think, is going to be very interesting for us in the year to come. And we'll see how people react. You're also welcome to send me an email and tell me what you think. Do you want to see how it works? Hi, Eddie. Oh, gosh. Hello.
Hello.
Eddie, where were you born?
I was born in a city called Leipzig in Saxonia. Very nice city, would be now 950 years old, a city of the books, city of very high tech, a very, very rich city, only 1.5 million people. But they paid more tax to the German government than Berlin with 4 million. So it was a very, very industrial city. My mom is born there, my grandmother was born there, and I'm born there.
Someone want to ask Eddie a question?
From there? What do you remember about your mom?
Please repeat your. My mom.
Give me 1 second.
What do you remember about your mom?
My mother, a very kind lady, smart, educated, kind. Everybody liked it, everybody. I think families in the building where my uncles, and when they had problems, they would come to my mom. My mom was a very friendly person, maybe too soft. And some people took advantage of us, you know. She would go out in the middle of the night because somebody had a heart attack or a stroke or something like this. She would help anybody. I loved my mom more than anyone else. I am so sorry that I have killed my mom. In my book, I speak a lot about my mom. It's very hard, very hard. She was a wonderful lady, wonderful lady. She was never tired, worked all day, cooked and baked and things like that. See, we were a very united family, and that's wonderful. But I look around me, there's not so many families united like we were. And I think this is also a kind of education. Education has a lot to do with that.
Someone else want to ask a question?
Where did you go to school, Eddie?
When you're 6 and up to 6, from 3 to 6, I was in a Hebrew kindergarten. And from 6, I was in a public school. And from 12, I went to high school called Leibniz Gymnasium. My grandfather of my mother's side was a student in that school. So you can imagine what a wonderful old school it is.
Eddie, you changed your name. Can you tell us why?
I cut off the Bovitz. It's J-A-K-U, J-Q.
No, your name, Schleicher.
Jakubowicz.
No, he adopted a name at school.
Oh, Walter Schleif.
Yes, you adopted a pseudonym at school. Was that because it was convenient?
When you're 6 and
It's probably different because Walter Schleif was a false identity that he was living under. So his dad got him a fake ID card when Hitler came to power.
Yeah. Does he talk about that?
Yeah.
Could you talk about Walter Schleif?
yes. From October 1933 till November 38. The 10th of November, I was arrested, and that's where they knew I was JQ. There wasn't any Walter Schleif.
So what we do at the end of each day is we see all of the questions, and then we can go and check the clips to make sure that was the right, what it should have said or what it hasn't said. So it got a little bit confused with how you phrased your question because no one's really phrased it like that before. Thanks.
I wanted to know how you felt false identity that you acquired?
Yes. My father, I think, was working on this for quite a while. And I don't know how he got, because as he was providing typewriters to the government before Hitler, he had access to people which were involved in doing passports and so forth. And probably somebody, when he said, I need an identity for my son, he found this Walter Schleif, same age, and he must have gone with his parents somewhere else. Even he was German, was a German Christian, Walter Schleif. And so he obtained that. It wasn't right, so he fixed it up. The date was September he was born, I born April. We made it so that it's easier for me in the way that it corresponds with my birthday and where I was born and so forth. And it was very nice. It was a nice passport. Unfortunately, I had to destroy it because they wouldn't believe me anymore which one I am, Walter Schleif or Eddie Jakubowicz. What do I want to be? The war is finished, so I have to go back to what I am really are. So I destroyed this card. I don't have it anymore. Because everybody say, why didn't you keep it? But I didn't know what I'm going to find and as I thought that I find still some family, but I didn't. So I was going to get rid of Walter Schleif.
Eddie, what happened to your family?
My parents were sent to the gas chamber on arrival in Auschwitz. And probably 1 hour or 2 hours after. It only takes 20 minutes after the gas reaches you and you're dead. See? Because the gas is coming up from the floor and until this reaches. So that's why when I have seen the gas chamber open, all the little people are on the bottom, the stronger ones are higher up, and the strongest is right on top of the dead people, because he went on the dead people to escape the gas. The gas comes, it's a gas, Cyclone B, who mixes with oxygen and becomes deadly gas. And the last one dying is the big bully, the big man, heavy, who is on the top.
You talk a lot about not hating. Was that something that was difficult to arrive at?
Sometimes, when you have, girls are more reciprocal, but the boys are not doing too bad. If they're above 15, 16, 17, this is a pleasure for me, because this is an age group which I can put myself on their level. And I see that my story is well accepted. Better by girls than by boys, because girls are more advanced. Yes, girls are more matured than boys. Always.
Didn't answer your question, but interesting. That's good. Eddie, do you hate?
Not to hate. You see, the people who are hated, or the people who are bullies, they look for faults in the other person. But we all have faults. If you would look at them who is the bully, I will find many faults. But we don't dare to contradict the bully. And that's wrong. This is when I say you must care. People have started not to care. It's not so long after the war. We are still alive from the war. And we see that the people don't care. They go around, they don't even know their neighbor, some of them, you know. They don't care. And this is what is in my every speech I do. I say, you must care. You not only care about you, you must care because you have to live with the people. You can't live on an island, go on an island where there are no people. But if you live in Sydney or in any city, you must care about other people. That's what we have to teach. And I like always to teach the teachers. I have spoken, Sandy took me to Catholic church, Catholic conference. There were thousands of teachers, 3,000 teachers were there. And I told them, it's up to you. If you want to make a better society, you have to put the work in. They look up to you. They listen to you. That's very nice. Do your job properly. Not only mathematics and geography and history, also humanity.
Eddie, what was it like when you first came to Australia?
Yes. Well, I'll tell you, we came in a time where there was a lot of rain. July is raining. And it rained in 1950 for maybe 3 weeks. I said to Flo, 1 week more and I go back. No, I was just joking. We met a very nice family. They never knew us, and they had only 2 bedrooms and a sunroom and 3 children. And can you imagine that they gave us 1 bedroom? And as they were kosher, so my Flo couldn't cook there, so she said, I'll cook for you. So I went to a place in Randwick, and I said, could you tell me how much it would cost board and food for 3 people? And she said, £4, because I was only earning £9. I said, if it's £4, I will offer the lady, my cousins, £5. First she didn't refuse, and I said, then I'll move out. And I paid £5. That was very, very nice. We became so friends that wherever we always were together. It was a very nice family.
I think one of the great things about these interviews is, especially after an entire week of filming, you get really comfortable with the person and their personalities really shine through. So I said we did 6 of these. Each one is very different, and you really do capture their little idiosyncratic ways of speaking and talking and make it very comfortable. And each one is really different. Eddie laughs a lot, as you can tell, which is just really wonderful. I also want to add, he was 100 when he did this interview, which was quite a feat. It was really grueling. They were in the rig that we had constructed. It was a massive green screen all around, so you were in this like bright green tent, and to sit there for hours after hours, always having to move your hands back into the resting pose. It was really difficult on all of our survivors, and when we did choose who would be doing it, whether they could physically cope, that was one of the top priorities. We also we did have a paramedic on standby the entire time that was checking their heart rates and making sure that, you know, their vitals were okay. We also had a psychologist on board as well who was helping, you know, just with the emotional toll, because we were talking about a lot of areas and topics that don't ever come up, and we were asking questions that, you know, many of us knowing their stories would be almost afraid to ask, but we had to ask these questions, and just so that, you know, they were aware and well cared for. A member of their family was also there at all times as well. So it was resource-wise quite intensive, as well as the number of staff that were required throughout the day. So it was quite big.
What effect did it have on you?
On me.
Yes, to be so immersed for month and month and month in these stories.
It's so actually Eddie's was very interesting because he was my first interview back when I came from maternity leave. So this was a very big adjustment for me. I'd been at the museum for about 17 years, so I think I was very well equipped and used to doing interviews. I had done many. I've been working with survivors for over 15 years. So it was not as hard. I think it was harder when Eddie passed away, because he passed away last April, and we were still working on this and cutting his clips and training him. That, I think, has been very hard on everyone. Like, this is actually the transition in process. And to deal with that, we had some sessions. And I found that bringing everyone together and to talk about it has really helped a lot of people to share stories. But it's challenging. It's challenging because we know and we love, all of these people, and that makes it very hard for us.
At the museum, when another survivor, Biederman, family came from the US or Canada, I don't remember now, but anyway, over there, and they saw it for the first time, and Yvonne was there as well, and to watch their reaction to it was quite something. Obviously they knew Yvonne, the grandmother, the great-grandmother, but that reaction was very confronting for the family.
Yeah, so before we launch to the public, we invite the whole family to come. We offer them tea or whatever function it is that they want. Another survivor that we filmed, Kuba Ina, he passed away since, and we had his family come for the session. There was about 30 or 35 of them, and it was very emotional for everyone. There was lots of tears, there's lots of, it was very highly charged. Pearl, his daughter, is a volunteer at our museum, and she runs sessions with her dad's DIT right now, and they are the most incredible thing to witness. And I think every visitor who comes, to have Pearl talking about her father and the interactive biography makes a gigantic impression. And I have to say, I'm a little jealous. I would love for one of my grandparents to be able to ask them questions like this. I think it really is something that the families appreciate a whole lot. No, he didn't. He didn't, unfortunately.
And say, Olga, has she seen it?
Yes, Olga's seen hers. She is, Olga. I don't know how to describe it. She never likes looking at herself. So I don't think she's really happy to engage with her DIT, but she sees the merit in it. And we will be launching our first, when we chose the participants, it was whether they were physically capable, but we wanted to get a cross-section of experiences. Male, female, young, old, camps. And so we did 2 child survivors, Francine Lazarus, who was a child hiding in Belgium, and Paul Drexler, who was a child in Sarah and then in Theresienstadt. And we'll be launching Francine's next month. And so I have a function with her family next Sunday, so we will see.
Are you doing any more?
No, we are not, but we still have the rig here. And so I would love to record more, if possible. Or we're also, we are in a lot of discussions with the Aboriginal community to see if it's something they're interested in, or veterans, because it's all sitting in storage. I think we should record as many as possible. It's a really incredible technology.
With the Shock Institute, is that the group that you did?
Yeah.
Is this all the Sydney Jewish Museum's property, or is there discussion around how it's shared, or will it show up in other museums?
So with the Shoah Foundation, we're collecting partners with them. We work very well. We have a great relationship. So the camera original material, we're joint owners of that. The software, the AI that runs it, that's their intellectual property, but the museum is a licensee in Australia. So we have the right to provide it to just about any institution in Australia that wants to have it. And so we're trying to get it out there.
If you still have the rig, can Melbourne Holocaust Museum access it?
Absolutely.
Have they asked?
No. No, but they do know about it. They do. It's a very labor-intensive process, and so it's not one that's just very easy to do. Each one takes about a year. So there's 3 months of researching. There's you can count 2 weeks of filming, because by the time you set it up, pack it down, the actual interview itself. Then there is about 2 months what it took us to cut all of and identify all of the clips. It then took another month to create the AI, then 6 months of training after that. So it's a very resource intensive, as well as all of the technology that or technology in the sense of managing all of the terabytes and data.
I'm mystified how Eddie knows when to answer a question. Or for instance, you talk and you mention his name, but there's no reaction.
No, there's no name, so I'm actually left-clicking the mouse right here. I'm using the mouse to control. So how I'm doing is I'm holding down the left click. In the exhibition, so other places have had a button where you can press it. You can do a keyboard and you can type in questions.
So it's on off.
But that's your key, yeah.
There's the array mic, which is the very fancy way, where you can actually just step under the microphone and that will trigger the software. So there's lots of different display options for it.
I was once watching August, and there were a bunch of school kids on the right with some family members, and they were arguing about the question they asked, and one didn't feel that he should answer properly. So the other one said, well, just go and ask her.
It's really hard. So like when someone asks a question identically or somewhat identically, it's very easy for us. Sometimes, for those of you who have interviewed survivors, you ask them a question as you know they might just answer something completely different. And so then we get into this problem of, do people think the AI is not working, or is that actually being true to how they answer the question? And then we have a conundrum of, well, what should we do? Should we stay true to how they actually answer the question? Or do we go and find something that's better suited? With Olga and Yvonne, Francine, we actually call them. We have a list of questions, and when Olga's in the museum, someone asked Olga, have you been to Tel Aviv? It's like, oh, I don't know. Olga, have you been to Tel Aviv? And then we, assigned it to yes or no. We have a lot of clips, so if it comes across a question that wasn't asked, that's a great question for a historian, or, I was only interviewed for 5 days. This wasn't the topic covered in my interview. There's all different sort of, clips that we can pull instead. Especially, people like to ask who won the soccer, or, sports related, what's your zodiac sign? Kids are kids sometimes.
I have 2 questions. Did your grant cover all the expenses that was involved in all the time and the people you talked about? Is one question. And the other is because where I come from, most of our survivors are no longer surviving. Their adult children have started speaking. Have you thought at all about doing this with the adult children of Holocaust survivors?
So we didn't get a grant. The project was funded entirely on behalf of the community. In fact, the museum gets no government funding whatsoever. We are completely reliant on the community. And it was something that we did manage to raise all of the money for, because I think there were a lot of people who are very excited and see the applications of this. I would love to do a second and third generation. I don't know if I would do this style, but I'm definitely doing a reporting session. Hopefully next year. I just have to write my proposal. Absolutely.